Welcome to Story Comic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 411. I'm your host, Barney Smith of StoryComic.com, and we're excited to have with us the internationally acclaimed and celebrated author of Wilma Dunn, Plumber of Crate, Nathaniel Hicklin.
Excelsior.
Hey, how's it going?
All right, how's it going with you?
I'm doing well. And it's excited. Before we actually started our conversation, we mentioned that you are a game master. You run role-playing games. And as a fan of role-playing games, I have to say the concept of your novel just reeks of like a core source book for a role-playing game setting.
Oh, I've already started thinking about it. Yeah, it's definitely the kind of, I want to tell the kind of stories that someone could game in if they wanted to. Like, especially with the idea of creating, I like the idea of a story where the implication is that there's other stories happening just off screen, that you're not seeing everything that's going on. I want the story to feel like it's in a living, breathing world where there's other stuff going on elsewhere. So I'm kind of using a lot of similar kind of world building muscles as with RPGs to work on my print work.
Okay. I love talking about settings on novels, and I know you probably have an amazing, unique setting for this book.
Yeah, it is the small town of Crate. In my head, it's in the middle of the American plains somewhere, but it's never specified what state it's in or even if it's in the US, but I suspect it's in the US because they get there via road trip. And long distance car rides are kind of a US thing, really. But yeah, it's inspired mentally by the Minnesota public radio program called The News from Lake Wobegon. It's this kind of sleepy little town.
Yeah.
My elevator pitch for people for describing the book who've heard of that is the X-Files from Lake Wobegon. So
really,
it's a sleepy little small town where really, really weird stuff just happens, and for them it's just normal, like Night Vale, but less spooky. Factually, it was largely based on the town of Wapello, Iowa, where a lot of my family has roots. If you look it up on Wikipedia, it's got like 3,000 people, and the only notable citizen from there was a federal judge who was my great-grandfather. So I used to go there for Christmas every year when I was a kid. It's right by I think in the corner of Iowa, right on the river. But it's the kind of small town where if your family has been there for a couple of generations, then everyone's going to know you.
right.
And that's the kind of stuff I wanted to do with this, was like everyone kind of knows a lot of people. Like if you're a prominent person who's been there for a while, then everyone in town knows you by sight. But this is the one where there's weird, spooky stuff going on. Like they have a gas station that also outputs AC for electric cars. No one really drives an electric car, but you could if you wanted one. It seems to have a helium output. What's that? No one has a fusion-powered car. So there's just lots of weird stuff that no one really thinks about. And that's part of what happens in the story is the main character, Wilma Dunn, arrives in this town and starts questioning why everything is the way it is. And just starts digging deeper and plumbing deeper, hence the title.
Describe your research process. How were you able to kind of like balance a little bit of like science with a little bit of like science fiction to make the setting seem almost like a location the reader's familiar with, but not quite?
Well, it's a lot of just again remembering childhood, visiting small towns, and a lot of like conventions I've been to that were in smallish towns. I just kind of look around, get the feel of like this is a main street, and I'm a big fan of the TV show Deadwood, so that's a lot about how a little settlement becomes a town. So you look at how a place develops. Like, this is the main drag, so this is where all the houses are. But eventually you run out of room on that, so there's a side street and there's houses that move along that way. Um, and like the main stuff is all around the central square. So that's thinking about like the layout of a town and things like that. Um, and then for and then kind of also playing with some of the tropes of storytelling where no one thinks about, like, in a movie you never see like a garbage truck. You assume the garbage gets handled somehow, but it's not like a plot of this is the place where we put our garbage. And that's actually one of the questions in that comes up is she's thinking about, like, one morning there's a full garbage can, the next morning it was empty. Where'd the garbage go? Like, I drove in here, this is in the town in the middle of nowhere, there's not a landfill nearby. I'm not seeing a lot of dumpsters and stuff, so what happens to all that stuff?
Right.
So part of the difference between this town and a real town is part of the point of the story, is this place is somewhat unreal once you actually look close at it.
Okay. And so it's how big is the book? How many pages is
Oh, bigger than I expected.
it?
Like, I haven't. I'm not sure about page count. Like 114,000 words, something like that. So I'm
Okay.
thinking it's probably around there. So it might be in the 500 high 400s range.
Wow. Okay. And is there where can people pick up this book then?
Oh, this book is available for pre-order at the moment from asapimaginations.com in the under the new releases section.
And that's right, because you did mention that you discovered that you are part of the ASAP Imagination Group. How did you discover them anyway?
I think I heard from them from people that I was following on social media because, writer Twitter is kind of a small world, artist Twitter, everyone kind of follows everyone else for those mutual bumps. And I
Right.
saw a couple people who were um, working with this publishing company. And at the time, I had been publishing this with another company before in a slightly different form, but that was a very small company that relied a lot on in-person events for a lot of their marketing, and COVID kind of put paid to that for a lot of stuff. So a lot of the events we were attending weren't happening, so everyone kind of drifted apart, and I and the rights to my work reverted back to me, thank goodness. So I've been kind of, for a couple of years, I was looking for what's a thing I can do with this apart
Mm,
from them. And a lot of, I saw some people on social media who had positive experiences with ASAP. So I looked into them, kind of saw what their submission criteria were, um, gave it a shot. They said they wanted to hear more. So we got talking further, and then it just kind of snowballed from there.
wow. Okay. And is this going to be like a series, or is this just like a one and done book?
Oh, it's definitely not one and done. I'm working on part two at the moment. It's looking like a trilogy right now. I wish I was able to write stories and be done when they were done, but I have not cultivated that talent yet. This, as I was saying earlier about world building, I like a world that there's more stories in than the one you're seeing, and I can't avoid telling some of them. So yeah, there's going to be more stories taking place. There's going to be more to this story, and is probably spin-offs for all I know. So
Wow.
there's
Okay.
definitely more to be told here.
And you mentioned that there's probably going to be a game setting too. Then.
Probably, yeah. With definitely not until more of the series is fleshed out, though, because there's more. The world expands beyond this town in some of the
Mm,
subsequent stories that I'm working on. So once I've got that a little bit more final, then I'll be. There's always more to do list on the list of projects. So
and what have you learned about yourself putting this book together?
uh I learned that I like to keep busy, apparently, because whenever there's a lull in get working on this project, the the gears are still turning, so I'm going to start something else. And that's how I have 6 different things in the pipeline right now that if I get blocked on this, I can jump over to something else and work on that for a little bit. If I get blocked on that, I jump over to something else. And after a while, eventually I've worked through the block on the first thing. So I can jump back and, always keep busy.
Right.
The Sherlock Holmes thing, have the engine turning on the pad with nowhere to go. So I need work, work, work.
Well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. And thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. What are some of the things that, reading, it going over the book when you're reading the manuscript, reading the draft again before you actually got it published, was there any parts in that book where you're like thinking, oh, I can't wait for people to read this part, this one's super fun?
Yeah, there's some moments in there especially when there's like big sharp turns in the way the story is going. I'm looking forward to seeing people's reactions of people who thought they knew what this story was, and then I get to drop an anvil on them at the end of Act 1, and they go, "Wait, what? Is that what's going on here?" Because I tried the way I was. Every time, like at the end of a chapter or the end of a couple of chapters, I tried to write it such that no question ever gets answered without asking 3 new ones, or something
Okay.
like that. So there's always more stuff going on, like with the thing with the garbage, like, wait, where's the garbage go? So you find out where the garbage goes, and then the question becomes, wait, what do those things come from then? Who is this? How many layers deep does it go? So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing people have ideas about what the story is, and then see them disproven in the next chapter, and keep getting. I look forward to seeing the red thread on the boards from people trying to anticipate what's going to happen.
What? So you know this as someone who's a game designer as well.
Mm.
There's the phrase of there's 3 types of authors. It used to be called the pantsers and um, the the pantsers and the um, plotters.
Mm.
So either interviewing some authors who are pantsers, meaning that they're telling the story and they're just as surprised as the reader is, like, wow, it's just wow, this is what's going on here.
Hmm.
And then you have the plotters who actually like build their outline and then actually outline the entire story to make sure they knew it, like you say, split it up into act 1, act 2, and just have it all done in ahead of time. um, but there's a new one that exists that kind of seems to come from role-playing games, like
Mm.
game masters. The term is planters, where
Yeah.
they'll plant a seed early on in that, and there's like, okay, I planted that, and then as they're working, as game masters do, they'll and then the author will, it's like, then they're stuck in a thing, and then they'll pull that thing that they planted like 4 chapters ago. I'm like, brought that in and wrap it up. So, uh, which one are you, Nathaniel? Would you categorize yourself?
Well, I have believed that I was a plotter because I do like, I have a, long-term plan for what I want to do. I know what story I want to tell, so I'll try to set up early so I can pay off later. But I want to leave room for the story to surprise me a little bit. I've definitely had moments like 2 characters in a scene, and I know
Mm.
by the end of the story I want to tease a relationship between the 2 of them. So I have that in mind when I'm writing their early scene, and then I let the dialogue kind of come out of them, and then, oh wait, whoa, this one's flirting with that one. Like, already? Okay, I guess we're going to start now. So it's like I know what I want the story to be, but the characters are open to argue with me about it. So it lands a little bit on the plants there, where I know what seeds I want to plant, and I will cultivate them so they go the kind of close to the way I want. But then if something lucky happens, then I go like, oh, that was fun. we're doing this now. Awesome, perfect. So we're gonna just steer it more in that direction a little bit. So I feel like I'm collaborating with the made up people in my head sometimes, and it does kind of feel like being the game master for this novel that up until now I thought I was writing by myself.
Do you see a piece of yourself, your own personality, in some of the characters that you've written?
That's the idea. Definitely. Which one is hard to, I want to kind of split them apart a little bit because I don't want, I got other stories I'm working on where this character is me, and that's because I'm working some stuff out with it. The other way that writing is like being a game master is that both things are partially therapy.
Mm.
But there's definitely in the main character of this the idea of wanting to know what's going on, but also the need for that kind of safety net and comfort, and not wanting to risk too much to find out what's going on, because I need to be able, if I find out that something's going on, that if the thing I find out isn't what I was hoping for, I want something I can fall back on and, have a foundation to build off of. So there's that kind of conflict in the main character between wanting to get to the bottom of stuff and figure stuff out and identify threats, but also not necessarily being accustomed to a place where failure will be accommodated and supported. So we got to have a fallback, got to have a plan B.
Mm.
But adventure means going beyond the plan B sometimes.
Right. Now, if any of your players that have participated in your games read your book, would they be surprised, or they just like, oh, this is a total trademark Nathaniel Hicklin game? Like I knew what was going to happen. Like I, or would they be surprised at? Are they're like, this is nothing like your games. This is exciting. Like, how would your players feel when they read your
It's
book?
possible. I mean, hopefully I can surprise them at the table. So hopefully I can surprise them with my writing at least as much as I surprise them in the games.
Hmm.
Um, but I suspect that they wouldn't be too surprised with the kind of stuff that they tend to see. Um, but maybe a little. I mean, I hope to surprise people with my work all the time. But I mean, knowing that someone's going to try to do that will kind of sometimes take away from it a little bit, though.
Right. But then it's like, what would you say is your signature like style or trademark style that you've implemented inside Wilma Dunn that your players would recognize?
Ah, well, I'm a big fan of like a found family.
Okay.
The band of adventurers. That's definitely a thing that's present in the story. Is that the main
Okay.
character gathers a group of people around her that are like the adventuring party a little bit. Um, so yeah, it's definitely a lot of everyone's got their own stuff. Everyone can't work out their stuff alone, so they, working interdependently with each other, they might be able to actually work out, find out that the stuff they had wasn't as big a deal as they thought it was. Now that they've got people to actually watch their back a little bit.
Nathaniel, if people want to read more of your work or learn more about you, where's the best place they could go to?
Well, ASAP Imagination in the Anyone world is also hosting another work of mine called The Adventures of Israel St. James, which is available
Okay,
now for
cool.
download. There's also work that I have posted separately at my coffee page, ko-fi.com/Nathaniel Hicklin, where a lot of my games work is published there, a lot of short stories. But in terms and stuff that will be turned into a novel again one day, who knows?
Nathaniel, you're gonna have to come back on once you have your sequel book coming out then.
Sure, here's hoping.
Well, because you said you so how quickly are you able to put a draft out?
I feel like I usually go 2 years between rough drafts.
Okay.
So that's kind of been the time frame that I stick to.
Right. Okay. Well, okay. That's yeah. You got you yeah, you're gonna have to come back on then, Nathaniel. I would love to learn more about your world building techniques too.
we'll put that on the books.
I forget. That was nice. It's a pleasure talking to
Yeah, you too.
That's cool. So you run so what's your favorite system then?
Oh, probably Fate Core. Yeah.
Mm,
Mostly because the rules of the system are the rules of the narrative. Like,
right,
it's not a system you have to figure out how to tell a story with these tools. It is they are storytelling tools,
right,
and it's like the way the game works almost like requires you to make a character that would be a good story character and not merely like a good build. That's like the thing
right,
that drives me nuts about RPGs so often is that you'll have a build where like these are the abilities or the spells that work together to allow you to accomplish objectives better. But Fate Core is the one that allows you to tell stories.
right.
And
Yeah, you mid max. People are trying to make mid
yeah,
max
you
characters
can't
to try
min
to
max
win.
Fate. It's all just the same numbers.
Right.
And the
Yeah.
dice aren't big enough to do that stuff. It's only about like the way you get bonuses for later is by making things hard for you now. And
Right.
it's you have to do it like a story would have it done. So
Right.
it's very conducive to the kind of game I like to play.